They tell you military disasters start with complex system failures, enemy sabotage, rogue commanders pushing the wrong red button. They are lying to you. On January 21st, 1968, the United States Air Force nearly wiped a massive chunk of Greenland off the map. And the culprit did not come from a Soviet intelligence agency. It did not come from a mechanical defect in the weapons bay. It came from 4 foam seat cushions. That's it. That is the whole story. A massive aircraft, packed with apocalyptic firepower, brought down by an attempt to get cozy. Politicians love pointing fingers at rival nations. Generals love blaming faulty radar equipment. But the truth about this Cold War nightmare is infinitely more embarrassing. And I am going to prove exactly how it happened. So how does the most advanced military on Earth let a few seat cushions start a devastating fire? Subscribe to this channel, and your eyes will open to how many catastrophic historical events happen right under your nose for the absolute dumbest reasons imaginable. Let's establish exactly what we are dealing with here before we go any further. This specific flight, operating under the military call sign Hobo 28, carried a truly terrifying payload. The crew sat on top of 4 Mark 28 Phi hydrogen bombs. We are talking about a destructive yield of 1.1 megatons per weapon. 1.1 megatons. Just a single unit of that explosive power could turn a sprawling modern metropolis into a smoking glass crater. And these pilots had a quartet of them sitting in the belly of their plane. The stakes literally could not climb higher. You do not take chances with that kind of cargo. You follow strict protocol. You monitor every single dial. You respect the terrifying power of the machine. The responsibility placed on these men demanded absolute perfection. The operation went by the name Hardhead. It operated as a top-secret continuous airborne alert mission designed exclusively to maintain visual surveillance of Thule Air Base and its radar facilities. This facility functioned as a primary radar outpost located deep in the frozen territory of Greenland. It served as the main early warning system against Soviet attacks coming over the North Pole. If the location suddenly went silent, Hobo 28 carried the burden of confirming whether it was just a communication glitch or the actual start of World War III. The aviators running these routes represented the absolute tip of the spear. Hand-picked, highly trained. The absolute best flyers operating in an era of intense global paranoia. They acted as the shield against total annihilation. 6 hours into this specific flight, the environment inside the cabin turned deeply brutal. Navigating through the endless Arctic night at high altitudes demands incredible physical endurance from every single crew member. The internal temperature plummeted drastically. The cabin became freezing cold. The airmen shivered uncontrollably. Because of this, when you are trapped in a freezing metal tube, thousands of feet in the sky, you stop thinking about global thermal nuclear war. You stop worrying about your cargo. You start thinking about how to get warm, right now, by any means necessary. Basic survival instincts took over completely. The original mission parameters suddenly mattered a lot less than immediate physical comfort. Major Alfred DeMario decided to fix the temperature issue himself. Superheated air blasted out of a specific heating vent located directly under the instructor-navigator's seat. He desperately needed to block that cold draft, which is why the Major grabbed 3 foam seat cushions and stowed them under the seat, directly over the metal vent. Later on in the journey, he added a 4th cushion to the pile for good measure. A completely mundane, harmless action. Or so he thought. He just wanted a physical barrier against the bitter cold. What he actually built was a devastating trap inside his own aircraft. An accidental self-destruct mechanism. He armed a completely different kind of threat without even realizing it. Those specific cushions consisted of a very dangerous material. They contained polyurethane foam. Fire investigators use a terrifying nickname for this exact substance. They call it solid gasoline. Why? Because the chemical makeup ignites rapidly and burns with unimaginable ferocity. It does not just smolder slowly. It explodes into violent, uncontainable flames almost instantly. And DeMario had placed 4 of these highly flammable foam cushions right by the heating vent. Think about that for a second. The most destructive machine in the world, rigged with a makeshift fire trap by its very own crew. Unbelievable. The absolute pinnacle of military engineering defeated by terrible interior decorating. Blocking the draft alone did not solve the cold issue, which meant the men still needed actual heat. So they opened an engine bleed air valve to draw heat into the aircraft's heating system. But a fatal flaw existed inside the mechanical system. The heating system malfunctioned. Instead of warming the oxygen to a comfortable level, the valve sent superheated air directly from the engine straight into the ducts. We are talking about temperatures exceeding 600 degrees Fahrenheit. 600 degrees, blasting straight onto those highly flammable seat cushions. It functioned as a guaranteed death sentence for the entire aircraft. The countdown had officially started. Captain Richard Marks became the first man to notice something felt terribly wrong. A strange odor suddenly filled the enclosed space. Captain Richard Marks smelled burning rubber. The captain got up immediately and searched the lower compartment. Nothing. He searched the area a second time. That is when he saw it. Flames blazed actively behind a metal box right near the vent. The superheated air slowly baked the polyurethane over 30 minutes before it finally ignited. The material did exactly what its terrifying nickname implied, and that forced the fire to spread fast. While these men flew miles above a frozen, desolate ocean, sheer panic began to set in. The crew reacted instantly to the threat. They grabbed their fire extinguishers and attacked the flames aggressively. They emptied every single canister they carried on board. Nothing worked. The catch was, burning polyurethane releases intense heat and toxic gas, making it extremely difficult to fight inside an enclosed aircraft cabin. It burns with immense ferocity, releasing massive amounts of heat into the enclosed space. But the actual flames posed only a secondary threat. The melting material produced thick, toxic black smoke. It poured out of the vent and instantly filled the entire cabin. The fumes grew so dense. They physically blinded the crew. They could not see the flight controls. They could not even see each other. The toxic smoke choked the breathable oxygen. The result was the aircraft abruptly lost all electrical power. The instrument panels went completely dark. The pilot sat in absolute pitch black, blinded by toxic smoke, choking on deadly fumes, and flying a fully armed bomber over the freezing Arctic. How does that even happen? A broken heater and a few pieces of foam completely neutralized the most feared bomber of the entire Cold War. They possessed zero navigation tools, no external communication, just the deafening roar of the massive engines and the terrifying heat of the spreading fire. If the sheer absurdity of this historical disaster resonates with you, take a second to hit like. It genuinely helps the algorithm show this completely insane true story to more people who desperately need to hear it. Captain John Hogg faced an impossible choice. He could attempt a blind landing at Thule Air Base in pitch darkness with zero working instruments, or he could abandon the massive aircraft entirely. Bringing a burning plane down onto an icy runway with that payload guaranteed suicide for everyone involved. Because of this, Hogg made the only rational call available. He ordered his men to eject. They had to blast themselves out of a burning plane directly into the sub-zero Arctic night. They pulled their handles. The explosive charges fired. 6 men blasted straight through the roof of the B-52 into the freezing void. But 7 men flew on that mission. Co-pilot Leonard Svitenko was not in an ejection seat when the emergency began. Earlier in the flight, he had given up his designated spot to rest in the lower compartment. When the sudden evacuation order came, he held no ejection handle to pull. Because the lower deck jump seat was not an ejection seat, he had to attempt a desperate manual escape through the lower hatch. He opened the door and prepared to jump into the empty sky. But the brutal aerodynamic wind slammed him violently against the solid metal frame. He suffered massive head injuries. Svitenko died during the escape. Brutal. A dedicated serviceman lost his life over a blocked vent. The massive B-52 flew completely pilotless. A burning metal ghost ship. It banked sharply in the sky and plunged straight toward the Earth. The bomber slammed violently into the sea ice of North Star Bay, exactly 7.5 miles from the military base. The impact proved absolutely cataclysmic. The crashing plane carved a massive 2,100-foot scar directly into the thick frozen ocean. The sheer kinetic force of the high-speed collision tore the massive aircraft into thousands of jagged, burning pieces. The wreckage burned fiercely on the ice, illuminating the darkness with a terrifying orange glow. Now listen closely, because this is exactly where the historical myths usually start. You will frequently hear rumors that one of the weapons sank completely intact to the bottom of the bay and sits there today. That is completely false. The conventional explosives surrounding the nuclear cores of all the payload detonated upon impact. They blew up. The conventional high explosives in the weapons detonated upon impact, destroying the bomb's structural integrity and primary stages. But that backfired when the huge explosion caused a totally different nightmare scenario. It shattered the radioactive plutonium cores and scattered toxic dust all over the crash site. The radioactive material coated the surface ice, becoming trapped in the crushed snow and refrozen slush across the crash zone. A localized ecological disaster. The political fallout from the crash hit immediately and incredibly hard. An accidental U.S. bomber crash had just contaminated a territory, controlled by Denmark with radioactive material. The catch was, Denmark maintained a very strict, highly publicized nuclear-free zone policy. The U.S. military scrambled frantically to clean up the toxic radioactive mess. Before the spring ice melted and dropped the dangerous plutonium straight into the ocean currents, they scooped up over 500,000 gallons of heavily contaminated ice in freezing, miserable temperatures. It functioned as a desperate, panicked cleanup operation driven by pure fear. But the diplomatic secrets ran much deeper than just the physical removal of dirty ice. We know all of this because of very recent developments. On October the 15th, 2025, the National Security Archive released newly declassified secret papers regarding the infamous crash. These historical documents detail the massive military rush to contain the damage and the absolute fury of local politicians. But they also expose a massive, coordinated lie. The papers reveal a totally secret, off-the-books deal between Denmark and the United States to quietly allow these dangerous nuclear flights as routine practice, while claiming publicly it was only for emergencies. Denmark broke its own laws. Both governments lied to their citizens, and they covered it up for decades. Sound familiar? A massive geopolitical scandal, all triggered by a single terrible decision. Environmental groups have consistently pointed to the lingering ecological impact of the disaster. Various environmental groups pointed aggressively to the lingering ecological impact. The frantic cleanup removed a massive portion of the danger, but you can never get every microscopic piece of radioactive dust. Some of that terrible material exists out there in the environment right now. It remains a permanent, invisible scar on the Arctic landscape. And it stands as a terrifying reminder of human fallibility. We build incredible machines capable of destroying the world, and then we crash them because someone felt cold. Think about that for a second. That is the terrifying reality of the Cold War. Not enemy genius, but friendly incompetence. Millions of dollars and a vital Cold War airborne alert strategy were entirely undone by a few pieces of foam and a broken heater. If you felt something watching this, like and subscribe. There is so much more history hiding just out of sight.